Hi, I'm Kelly Thomas. Welcome to Ingenious Baby. Every week I'll interview leading experts to help you help your child reach their full potential so that your child can become all that they were born to be.
Welcome to this baby.
Smartphones, a harmless modern pacifier or mind-altering device that hinders your child's brain development. Joining us today is Dr. Andrew Doan, an eye surgeon and neuroscience PhD. He will tell us how technology affects our children, their ability to learn, and what we can do to help. Dr. Doan, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
So we've all seen it. Everywhere we go, people are buried in their cell phones, including babies and toddlers. So I'm wondering, a lot of parents are going out to eat, or maybe they're on a long plane ride and they give their toddler or baby a cell phone. How harmful is that?
It's how you use it, right? So in clinical medicine, it's kind of like if I give you an anesthetic for surgery to numb your eyeball so I can do surgery on your eyeball. I'm an ophthalmic surgeon by the MD training route. And so that would be a healthy use of a anesthetic to numb the eyeball. However, if I give you an anesthetic drop and you have dry eye syndrome and you use it all the time for dry eyes because you couldn't handle the dryness and the grittiness and the pain, the numbing drop that I prescribe to you, if used chronically, will melt your cornea. Literally will melt your cornea. You will have a ruptured eyeball and infection that could actually result in loss of eye or death. So my analogy to medicine with digital media actually applies, because clinically we have doctors who are using digital media like on a tablet or VR glasses. We're using it to reduce anxiety and reduce pain in clinical procedures. For example, I've talked to anesthesiologists who actually have done work on this, and they share with me that a tablet video game before surgery is equivalent to 10 milligrams of Valium. Okay, so Valium is used for anxiety disorders, and that's a prescription-controlled drug. If you use VR gaming, there's a company in LA called Applied VR who's working with Cedars-Sinai. So one thing that VR headsets can do is actually reduce pain to the point where pediatric children who have burns can actually undergo painful scrubbing of their burns during treatment while they have the VR headset. So the answer to you took a long time to get there is that, yes, if you use the tablet to, let's say, occupy your child on a plane ride, and use it in a structured, orderly fashion, and knowing that what you're doing is sedating the child, and also using that tablet to get through to the next, plane stop or the airport, arrival, then that's okay. But if you're using it all the time, then it's like giving a drug to your child to sedate that child, which will inhibit brain development. And this is critical because the brain develops, and at certain ages, if there's not enough behavioral feedback to the brain, there could be permanent atrophy or damage to those areas.
So how much is too much then? I mean, when are you at risk for some of this damage to the brain? Because I know your brain develops so quickly the first 3-4 years.
Yeah, we don't have enough research. The only way to know this is to take identical twin studies, okay? Because right now research is so hard because you're studying different populations, different people that are susceptible. That's why we have people who can drink alcohol and don't have an effect, or some people watch a movie and they don't cry or get scared. People have different responses. So the answer to you is that it varies from individual to individual, right? But what we do know is that if you give it to your children all the time, there's a certain point in time when it's going to be damaging. And the only way to know is identical twin study. What we do know from China, though, they have over 200 addiction centers specialized in addictions on digital media and internet and gaming. What we do know is that they said the sweet spot for addicts, meaning that addicts are people who are dysfunctional in multiple areas of their lives: financial, emotional, sleep problems, emotional problems, suicidal ideations. There's criteria to become the label addiction, but that's a lot. I mean, you're talking about 4 or 5, significant areas in people's lives that are affected in order to become an addict. The research out of China has said about 6 hours or more is indicative, or not indicative, but associated with a internet or gaming or digital media addiction. So that really doesn't answer you, because definitely you don't want to expose your kid to 6 hours a day. But the sad part is the Kaiser Foundation in 2010 estimates that in ages 8 to 18, in their research, the Kaiser Foundation found that the average American child uses digital media for entertainment, not for learning, not for training, not for benefit. On average, about 7 hours, 38 minutes a day.
Oh,
so
wow.
based on that right there, on the China studies and the China's research on the internet addicts over there, the U.S. on average are already 1 hour, 38 minutes too much based on that.
But what about the real small children? I know there's not a lot of research on that, but I mean, what is your opinion on, giving them something that age? I mean, is it?
Very dangerous.
Yeah.
Very, very dangerous, because in children, they have limited time to develop their brains, right? So the brain develops from back to front. Vision, touch, somatosensory cortex develop first, and then the frontal cortex, which is the front part of the brain, that's the frontal cortex here, that's higher executive reasoning, such as empathy, relationship with others, reasoning, advanced reasoning, all these things that are important to be successful, right? So I have a hand analogy for you, is that in a young child, it starts with a blank slate, right? So what you expose a child to, let's say empathetic situations, they develop empathy. So let's say this brain area in the frontal lobe represents empathy. Let's say the other finger here represents an area for communication skills and eye contact. And this one represents, let's say, relationships with others, relationship with mom and dad and siblings, right? And then this one, let's say, patience, how to sit still and behave. And then this one, let's say, is digital media stuff, such as hand-eye coordination and the whole host of other benefits that people use as a indication of using it earlier or exposing children earlier to digital media, right? So here's the problem, is that if you're primarily exposing your child to digital media to occupy that child, what happens is to the other areas of the brain that you desire the child to develop, right? Communication skills, empathy, relationship with others, how to sit patiently through a doctor's visit office or on the plane or car ride will actually not develop, okay? And so what happens is the other areas of the brain related to digital media develops and gets bigger. So they're literally they become all thumbs thinking, right? Here's the danger. In a little child, if we don't know the exact time point, but in vision, in the world of ophthalmology and optometry, children who have visual deprivation in one eye, it's called amblyopia. The brain shuts down at around 8 to 9 to 10, maybe 11, where that eye, literally in the brain, becomes disconnected. And that area in the brain that controls that eye or receive inputs from that eye shuts down and is atrophied. I think the same thing can happen in young children if they do not develop their developmental milestones that are essential to be a well-rounded individuals, that by the time they're older in teenage years, there could be a permanent or not a permanent, but a significant reduction in those areas of the brain. And once those areas of the brain pass their developmental milestones, there's some neuroplasticity. However, it is very difficult to train the brain and record new pathways once it passes the developmental milestone, because we know that from vision. If we don't correct the vision and correct amblyopia or the lazy eye problem by the age, let's say age 14 or 15, that's really late. People are literally useless, have useless vision in that eye. The brain cannot be rehabilitated at that point for vision.
Wow. There are so many educational apps and learning, tools associated with technology. Is there any benefit at all to using technology in a learning capacity?
Absolutely. So the way I describe this is kind of like a syringe in clinical medicine. The syringe is a plastic container that I can put any kind of medication in there, right? I can put, like, let's say a diabetic who needs insulin, to inject insulin to help them with their type 1 diabetes. I can also put heroin in the syringe, right? So really, technology is that. So what I've broken down to people is that they tend to use the overriding term like video games to cover all video games, right? So that's where the research is still difficult. What happens is video games is actually broken on a spectrum of what I call digital potency. Now, things that are potent, meaning that they arouse the body, arouse the mind, helps, get the body excited, goes from educational, which I call digital veggies, to the other spectrum called digital sugar. Okay, so then to describe what I'm talking about is that educational games that you referred to, Kelly, would be somewhere like past the point of Excel spreadsheets and checking email, right? So what happens is, so let's say email word processing over here, really boring digital veggie, that. We don't like it, right?
Right.
And then you jump over here and it's a math learning game. You see what I'm saying? Then you jump over here and it could be, a game where you build Lego blocks and build online worlds. And then over here you have online play for first-person shooters where you can get to kill other people and show how good they are. And then over here you can have like maybe digital fantasies where you role play and on social media and meet really exciting people. And then finally over here you have the digital crack of pornography and sexual images. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
So therefore, So my answer to you is that we had to define that first because the research does show that educational games can actually be very effective for learning tools. We know from research, for example, that surgeons who play video games actually are better surgeons than surgeons who don't play video games. So it helps with hand-eye coordination. We also know this also from the research from the University of California, Riverside, where they actually studied video game play in baseball players, where they play this very boring video game. I mean, when you look at it, it's like black and gray circles and objects on a white black background, and they're moving and they're working the eyes to move. You wouldn't even think that's a video game. It's so boring. But they play that video game 30 minutes a day, and the entire baseball team on average improved their vision from 20/20 vision to 20/15 vision. And their hand-eye coordination improved to the point where the team's batting average all improved. You see? And so we also know that, from the arousal aspect is that when you arouse the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis through digital media, for example, you raise the levels of cortisol. Well, cortisol from the adrenal gland is actually a glucocorticoid, and it's a transcription factor. It actually goes into the brain and helps to record memory better. So yes, when you have games and you have an engaging, let's say a TV show or engaging game or engaging digital media input, it turns you on. And as you turn you on, the brain records things better.
Oh, interesting.
That is why if you're in a lecture that's boring, it doesn't work so much to help people learn. So when games are used in that aspect of digital veggies, they are very effective in helping kids learn and develop educational skills.
At any age? I mean, are we talking about the real young kids too, or just when they're a little bit older?
Okay, so the American Academy of Pediatrics basically recommended no screen exposure 18 months or less. That means if you're a baby from 0 to 18 months, no screen time whatsoever. Now, I don't know what research they used to determine that 18 months was better than 24 months.
Right.
So they shaved off 6 months. I don't know where that research is. I've tried to look for the reason why they cut 6 months. What I recommend doing is going to the old recommendation of 2 years or less, no screen time whatsoever. And then basically from, let's say, 3 to 10, you can go to half an hour to an hour max a day. And it has to be, directed educational digital media like TV shows that are educational. There's research out there that certain cartoons that are like, sporadic and lots of stimulation actually lowers your child's IQ. I mean, that was published, literature, and I didn't want to mention the show because I don't want to get in trouble by, the shows, but, literally, you know what kind of cartoons I'm talking about.
Right.
Parents can judge. But if you have the long, kind of like Mr. Rogers type show, the Captain Kangaroo type shows, the Magic School Bus type shows, those are healthy and they can actually teach your kids to learn. The research is still out on video games in young kids. So what I tell parents is avoid video games in kids until they're like 12 or 13. Let their brains develop. There's so much other things that you can do to fill up their brains. introduce the games later and introduce it carefully. But for those families who have to play video games, let's say dad or mom play the gamer, then I recommend using the video games kind of like a family event. So on a weekend for reward, play together. Play the sports games together, but it has to be age appropriate. I've seen dads who've played Grand Theft Auto with their 6-year-old,
Right.
And if you've ever played Grand Theft Auto, there's this inappropriate. So mature video games should be only for mature audiences. But if you play appropriate games, and if you go to Common Sense Media, they rate, the age appropriateness of the content for kids. If you play like E for Everyone games, play with the kids. Use that opportunity of that arousal, of the hormones being released from the games to bond with your child together. And that way you build an experience. So after a half an hour of play, you stop. What I also recommend doing is that if you spend half an hour on digital media, you spend half an hour on physical activity as well. So that kind of counteracts the sedentary lifestyle where kids are getting obese and having problems. And then I recommend no smartphones until the child's 18. And what's amazing is, the amazing thing is that if you call your cell phone carrier and ask them at what age do you recommend cell phones being used, and this is from Melanie Hempy from Families Managing Media, she called multiple phone companies and the consensus is unanimous, 18 years old, because that's the age when they can actually sign a phone contract. Okay, so that's interesting. Now, that's not based on research, whether it's good or bad, but what's interesting about this is that phone companies cannot sell a smartphone to a minor because of the contract issue. Okay, but parents are giving literally these handheld computers to their kids too early, who don't have the frontal lobe to stop from looking up digital media.
This information you shared is so fascinating and such important for everybody, because we live in a digital age and no one knows, like you said, really what the implications are. So is there anything else that you would want a parent of young children to know about technology that we haven't covered?
You guys are the heroes for your children. It's not going to be Dr. Doan or Melanie Hempy or Chris Rowan or Victoria Dunkley or all these people who are working in the field already that are going to be heroes for your kids. You're going to take this information from us, apply wisdom, right? Data without wisdom is garbage. You can look at all the research you want, but without wisdom, it's useless. So use your parental wisdom to be your child's hero. You have a chance to make a huge impact in your child's life. And because everyone's using digital media, if you can take what I even said today and apply it to your children will be outliers. Will be successful outliers in the digital age, because everybody else is suffering while your child is now developing essential behavioral neural pathways that will be superior to everyone else.
That is spot on. It's amazing. I think I'm so glad to have you on here and talk about everything you know about this.
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored. This is fun for me, as you can tell. I love doing this.
If you know someone who'd be a great fit for the show, come on over to ingeniousbaby.com and share your tips and story ideas. You are your baby's first and best teacher.